Hey, everybody, welcome to today. I guess it depends when you're listening, what day it is, but it's today for everyone somewhere. Um, so today, I'm going to say today 40 times now. I have Kathleen on with us today, who's actually one of We Inspect's clients. And I like to bring folks on when they're willing. Not everybody wants to chit chat on these things, right? But Kathleen, fun fact about her, she used to have her own podcast, so she likes chatting. So this is going to be
Yeah.
fun. And I wanted to have her on to just kind of like talk through her path to how she figured out or even realized that I need to be thinking about mold being an issue, to the point of like what happened once you realized that. At what point, did We Inspect become a part of that? How long was that? What were the steps? Talk through maybe some of the highlights of what we found and what your feedback and feelings were of the process. Would love to talk a little bit about the prioritizing of remediation, because yours was like a classic case, which is what I try to preach all the time, but a lot of time people don't hear it, so I want them to hear it from you. And then how you're doing now, so like that's the map basically that I would love to hit on for the day. So
That's a lot.
everyone,
Okay.
I know. Everyone meet Kathleen.
Hey, yeah, I'm so thrilled to be here. And before we hit record, I was just telling Brian how, like, what a blessing his company was. Just incredible. But yeah, high level, let me just first address, like, kind of like skipping to the end a little bit, was the fact that because if you're dealing with mold or you think you may have mold, let's be honest, it can feel, as the client, it can feel overwhelming. One of the major highlights, blessings, was when we had our inspector come in and you get the report. It's kind of like, oh my gosh, what is going on? We've got mold everywhere, basically. But what was so nice is to have that prioritization list of it's lettered A, B, C, D, and E. A is like, okay, red alert, danger. This has to be done right away. And then everything else is, second, third, fourth from there. So that part was amazing. It helped with the level of anxiety and overwhelm, right? The fear, which I know you talk about too,
Yeah.
because it's real. But one of the reasons I wanted to come on is that I feel like my story is maybe not super unique, but unique in what I hear a lot of people talking about with
Mhm.
mold illness, mold exposure. And that, like, my journey started 6 years ago, back in 2019. All of a sudden, my legs went completely weak. Could barely walk up the stairs, just all of a sudden. Over the course of a year, I saw 10 doctors. No one knew what was wrong with me. Ruled out, ALS, MS, all kinds of things like that. Then I finally found a functional medical doctor who found that I had Lyme and Bartonella. We addressed that. Still wasn't getting completely better. Then found out I had an autoimmune condition called myasthenia gravis, which affects your muscle strength. That got maybe 80% better, not completely better. Fast
Mhm.
forward, again, this has been over the course of 6 years. My doctor, we did some different testing, found out high levels of mold in my system. And if you I talk about shock, my jaw was on the ground. Like, mold? I don't have mold in my house. What are you talking about? Never saw it,
It's
never smelled it, never in a million years I thought this can't be right. This has to be wrong. Spoiler
Can
alert,
I ask
no,
you
it yeah,
a couple questions real quick
yeah,
off of that? One,
yeah.
um, did the symptoms with what you were feeling with your leg, did that coincide with like you moving into the house? Like where was the connection there? Or had you been in the house for a long
No,
time? How long did you
gr
live there?
great question. So, we had been in the house at that time for about 6 years.
Okay.
So, no, for me, it just came on very suddenly. I didn't have any of the typical quote unquote symptoms you think of when you hear mold illness. I wasn't having extreme fatigue, wasn't having sinus issues, wasn't having the headaches, wasn't having like the typical, like maybe top 10 mold symptoms. I didn't have any of those.
And I
It
think
was
it's really
more that
important. Yeah, I think it's really important to like just clarify that for, because a lot of times it's like, oh, I've been in the house for a while and I was fine until, today when I'm not. So it can't be the house because I had been in the house for so long. That variable did not change. Right. And it's a very linear
mhm,
way of
mhm,
thinking, but your body is not a linear system. So as
mhm,
exposure and consistent exposure and stress on the body builds and builds and builds, the body at some point in time turns into the straw that breaks the camel's back. And something you might not, you start manifesting symptoms and things like that that happen. So that piece of what you're saying, I
right,
think is really, really important, because a lot of people would dismiss the house if it's like, oh, well, I've been here for 6 years and I was fine. And then
right.
all of a sudden I start feeling something, must be something else. Right. So anyways,
Yep.
that was something that really specific that
Yeah,
stood out when you're going through it. So yeah, continue.
exactly, exactly. Well, one thing I do want to mention, this may or may not be that important. I think maybe one of the reasons, or I know one of the reasons why we never smelled the mold, never saw the mold. And of course, we don't have the expert eyes that your team does, right? But it was in our attic throughout the whole entire, we have 2 HVAC because we have a
Mhm.
big house, a two-story house. It was all over the HVA system. So what does that mean? It's pumping through every single room of the entire
Yep.
house. Like, no,
100.
no, it's like, "Oh, well, let's just not we'll just not stay in that room." It's no, it's everywhere, everywhere.
And what's interesting about
So,
that
yeah.
is that there are definitely times where it's one or two or three things that are really the main exposure piece of the puzzle in a space, right? So, like you're saying, HVAC is pushing everywhere. So, if the HVAC has a problem, you effectively have a source in every single room of your house when it turns on.
Mhm.
Now, switch that around to every room I walk into, there's mold everywhere, right? So, like, that's kind of the equivalent of what that is. The attic is really similar. The attic covers an entire upstairs of a house. And if there's a problem up there, it's literally a shared floor slash ceiling to all the rooms down below.
Yeah.
That's no different than a side wall. It's no different than that, right? So there are these kind of like secondary areas that aren't like where the interior of the house where you live that could have really, really big impacts on the house, while the core interior of the house is doing relatively okay, which is really what the situation was here on your end too.
And if you think about it, I don't know where you live, Brian, but here I live in Southern California. Everybody has attics. We don't have basements. How often are you in California too? Okay.
Yeah, I'm in Orange
There's
County.
no base Okay, okay, that's cool. Um, we don't have basements. How often are you in your you're never in your attic, and we didn't really store much stuff up there because it's kind of a pain to get up there. But most
Mhm.
people, if you don't pay for a storage unit somewhere else, you've got your attic crammed with stuff. So like you would never
Yeah,
know it's up there.
yeah, 100%. You're
It's
completely
just
right.
crazy. And
I
then,
mean,
I was
I don't go to my attic
there
nearly as much as I should, and I know enough, and I still don't go up there enough. I probably go up there, like, once a year.
yeah.
So
And
it's
even
like
if
when I
we
go.
did, yeah, we wouldn't have known mold was just not on our radar at all. But one thing I do wanna say is that I was very fortunate that my husband has been very, very supportive. I
Mhm,
I have my 2 kids, they're now 24 and 22. They had been, living with us. When we moved in, they were, 12 years old, 10 and 12. Um, but it seemed that I was the only one that was being affected. And
mhm.
what I've learned over time was maybe yes, maybe no, maybe not to the degree that I was being affected. And I would tell my husband this, right? I said, he's like, I don't, he's, I totally am on board. He said, I'm not going to lie. I'm a little skeptical because I'm fine. I said, maybe you are, maybe you're not. Like maybe it's something that's been so gradual and you think, oh, it's just, I'm getting a little older. Maybe I'm having some aches and pains. Oh, that's just how it is. And then, so I'd say, well, maybe yes, maybe no. Maybe you just don't know yet. I think it wasn't even 2 weeks after that conversation, he found out he had Hashimoto's thyroiditis, which is like a top
Whoa.
autoimmune condition. I think probably you can clarify this. It's like one of the top autoimmune conditions caused or triggered by mold.
Yeah, I mean, I hear Hashimoto's more than anything else. There's so many autoimmune conditions, and there's so many that have like
Yeah.
these names you've never heard of and this and that, but like Hashimoto's is always like top of the list when we're chatting with people. And I love that you
Yeah.
brought that up, by the way, because you hear this a lot. It's I'm there's only one person in the house that's affected. And what you're
Yeah.
saying, like I sometimes try to have this conversation with people and it doesn't land because they think I'm trying to like I don't know. They think I have some ulterior motive for having a conversation like this with somebody. But the
Mhm.
reality
Yeah.
is every person's body reacts differently to things.
Mhm.
This
Mhm.
is why someone in your house can catch the flu and your spouse doesn't catch the flu. That is an airborne
Right.
thing that your body reacts to that you breathe in. And one of us is sick, throwing up in the bucket on the side, and the other one is here wrangling the kids, feeling totally fine. That is a perfectly acceptable thing to happen in the world for people. Like that
Yeah.
framework of thought, like, oh, yeah, that's normal. That happens. Replace a virus in the air with mold that you're breathing in and it's still impacting bodies. And for one person to be hit hard where the other one is just like maybe a little bit, all of a sudden, there's no way that's possible. Right. And it's
Yeah.
not true. And we have so many examples of how it happens all the time. And so it's just not tied to mold. I love that you brought that up. And for anyone who's listening, sometimes your partner and your spouse isn't on board, and this is such like a key thing that you can bring up in conversations that might be able to help open up the mindset a little bit of your partner as you're going through this, right? And it's them, it's your kids, just specific little things like, hey,
Yeah.
this is weird, this isn't how it used to be. So anyways, I keep cutting you off, I'm sorry.
Yeah, and
You
like
just
now
said
looking back, it affected my daughter differently. Now that I know, oh, this wasn't probably just allergies. It was more the typical, like the sinus, the congestion that didn't seem to clear up very easily. So like you
yeah.
said, everybody's different. Everyone has different body burdens of whatever it's viruses or toxins or whatever that they're going through life with. And then it's going to attack the weakest part, you know?
Absolutely.
So it's
Absolutely. You're
ah,
Okay,
yeah,
so we have gone through the point. You identify Lyme, you identify autoimmune, you start making some progress, you hit the inevitable peak that you can't get any better. Sometimes people even regress
yeah.
after that point a little bit, depending on where you are. And then you do mold testing. Real quick, what did you do clinically for mold testing?
So clinically, and I know this pros and cons to this, the mycotoxin test,
Hmm.
which is a urine test, and I know a lot of times that can tell a lot of foodborne molds. But for me, it did show some foodborne molds, but also, and I don't remember because I, 'cause I can't
Yeah.
pronounce them anyway. So there were some definite, very, very high level molds in my system. Another one that he ran that I know this isn't really mold specific, but I think it's kind of a proxy test for your level of inflammation, which is TGF beta 1, trans growth
Yep.
factor beta 1 test. That was
Yep.
like sky high. So those were the two main ones. But then him also knowing, everything else that we've done, like you should be better. The Lyme is in remission, the Bartonella is in remission, like all your other markers are low or non-existent. So he's like, okay, let's go down the mold rabbit hole. And I'm so thankful that he did.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so now you said, all right, mold's the thing, got to figure this out. What's next? Where did you go? What'd you do? How'd that go?
Yeah, so the first thing I did was, and it's funny too, probably like a lot of your clients, I've learned so much about mold in the last 6 months that I've never wanted to know about. But one of the first things we did was, so obviously, okay, we've got mold. What do I do? Where do I start? I did an a dust test. So what is
Or
it?
does
ERMI, ERMI, environmental, whatever it
Yep.
stands for, something.
It's
So it's
environmental relative
ERMI.
index.
Right. Okay. So it's like this little Swiffer dust cloth you take. So I did two of them. I did one for the upstairs, one for the downstairs, thinking like, I wonder where this is. So this is before we called your company. Long story short, sent that in. It's like, oh my gosh, we've got mold upstairs and downstairs. And
Mhm.
then I came across you, had one of your inspectors come in, several hours long inspection. I mean, it was extremely detailed, taking pictures, doing the was it UV light? What are the different,
Uh,
like the
Infrared camera,
testing for
moisture
the,
meters.
yeah, and the
Yeah.
infrared and the moisture levels and the in wall air samples, like very,
Mhm.
very detailed.
Mhm.
So yeah, I mean, he was here for a few hours, and then we got the results, and it's like, yeah, glad we were sitting down because it was a lot. But so I think our whole entire report, I just went back and looked at it, just
Oh, don't scare
unbelievably detailed. I wanna say it was like 200 pages long,
I was gonna say, don't scare people
just
with
like,
how long it is. Um,
no, no,
but
but
it's
but if you're in
important.
but if you're into the details,
Yeah, yeah.
it's so important to know what you're dealing with, and then, and I've heard you talk about this on a recent podcast, is about the overwhelm, and not, when you get this report, you feel like, "Oh my gosh, we gotta burn the house down or we gotta sell it."
Can we
But
can we do a
knowing,
quick
okay, let's,
pause on this piece of it? Can we do a quick pause and we'll come to this
yeah,
because this is like a whole
yeah,
this is a whole thing that we're about to get into.
yeah,
When you
yeah,
were so you do your ERMI, or you could do the dust test,
yeah,
which is our version of the dust test or of an ERMI that we created that
gotcha.
gives
Oh,
interpretation
great.
from our inspection data on top of that raw information. So we have a different version. So it's called the dust test. Either one is fine.
Awesome.
So you get that. So then you say that you came across us. Were we the first people you came across? Did you start looking
Yes.
locally for stuff? Or where did you start looking?
Okay, so so this is kind of a very weird aside. My functional medical doctor actually recommended, and you've probably heard of this, a mold dog.
Hmm.
Have you heard of mold dogs? Okay,
Oh,
they
I've heard
come
of them.
in, and I'm brand new. I'm like, okay, sure, we'll do a mold dog. It's a dog that's trained to sniff out mold, just like they could be trained to sniff out explosives and drugs. They have dogs that can sniff out for mold. The the major con of that is this dog will pick up to the billionth, teeniest, tiniest particle that maybe not could not be an issue. So there were, I don't even know, so many different areas the dog alerted to, but it wasn't helpful because we didn't know what type of mold it was. And okay, is this serious? Is this a problem or is this not a problem? You know, he was alerting to dirt in our potted plant. Like, well, I don't think that's where the source of mold is coming from. So then it was, then we need to get somebody in here that's like very reputable, somebody we can trust that we know is going to walk us through this. So then we contacted you guys.
Yeah, the mold dog thing is interesting, and I've actually been seeing more and more people do it, and it's not expensive, right? It's a easier access way in the grand scheme of things, and you can
Yeah.
wrap your head around the concept of exactly what you just said. If it can train a dog to smell cocaine, I can train this dog to smell mold, right? The
Mhm,
the thing
mhm,
that I have come
mhm.
across with the mold dog stuff is one, molds don't always produce an odor. And so they have to be trained on an
Mhm.
odor. So if the mold issue is an older issue that has since stopped, the colony itself is no longer active and no longer creating the off gassing that would create even a subtle odor for the dog. So I've seen a lot of times where we'll go into a home And yeah, whatever the dog flags, I mean, generally there's something going on, right? Like that part's there. But then there's like other stuff that the dog doesn't flag that we then point out because it's something that's dry or there's a historical thing or something like that that goes on. But then the thing that you just said again is like 100% the issue. It's like great. It's almost like having a local inspector come in and be like, okay, here, you got mold in this house. What do I do? Gut the whole thing? Like, what do I do next?
Yep.
Right. And so Mold Dog points to 5 areas. It's like, I guess you have to rip all this out. Like, what do you do?
Yeah.
So every time someone
Yeah.
has a mold problem,
Yeah.
they then go try to find another inspector to come in and validate stuff, right? And it's
Yeah.
like you end up
Yeah.
actually spending more money that you wouldn't normally spend by
Yes,
having this other
exactly.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, I just
Yeah, but,
so
we
the
were at the beginning of this journey, just brand new. I'm like, "Okay,
yeah,
sure." Yeah, the mold dog was it was $1,500. So knowing what I know now, wouldn't this is just
wow,
me personally,
wow.
would not have done the mold dog. I would have for sure done the dust test because that way you know what type of mold do you have. To some
Mhm.
degree, a little bit quanti quantity, sort of,
Yeah, yeah.
and then then the inspection, but, hindsight's 2020. It's
No,
all part of the
this is
process.
why I like to like dig into like every step that happened so we can talk through it and then people can hear like, oh, this is that. What did you learn from that? Oh, like, right. So I think it's like helpful to talk through this stuff. So,
Yeah.
okay. So you go through that. So you find us, we come in, spend hours. How did you feel after we went through the house? Before the report, but after we went through the house? Like, how did you feel?
Scared. I was like, "Wow,
Yeah.
that was really detailed. What the heck are they gonna find?" Well, and then I think we knew after, after the inspector was here, he's like, "Yeah, I'm definitely seeing some visible mold up in the attic." We're like, "Okay, this is not gonna be great." So, but we felt good
Yeah.
in that it was so thorough. We knew we were gonna have answers, and from the
Hmm.
answers, we could make a plan.
Yeah. That period in between, like when we come in, and then you have someone who's combing through your house for 4, 5, 6 hours, and you see like just all the places they're spending time and stuff. That triggers
Yeah.
that 4 weeks or 3 weeks or whatever. That's where the overwhelm is at its most because you assume
Yeah.
the worst because that's what normal human nature is. It's I assume the worst of
Yes.
everything, and you start spiraling
Yeah.
down what's the worst case scenario that could possibly happen. And everyone
Yeah.
does it, and it's a normal thing that you do, but the reality is,
Sure.
and it's much easier said than done, is most of that stuff that you created in your mind, these fears that you created, they don't actually happen, most of it. And so that's like the hard part is that time in between. And so we try to have conversations like, hey, listen,
Mhm.
remember, we're going to talk priorities. We're going to help guide you through this. It's not going to be every single thing, but the question is, which of the things
Yeah.
is it going to be? Right. And start kind of working through
Right.
this. And then you get to when the report and the results come and then you have, your follow-up, consult with us. Can you talk a little bit about how like that conversation went and what were some of the questions that you had and what was some of the information that was shared with you that you found helpful or not helpful or whatever?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, this was at about almost 3 months ago. Actually, that was
Uh-huh.
a remediation that was done. But yeah, this was in November. I think it was the middle of November when we had the call. Here we are, like the middle or third week in April. But yeah, I just remember again feeling a little overwhelmed. Um,
Uh-huh.
but the person that we talked to just was really, really good about again reinforcing. Yeah, we did have several places in the house that do need attention, but the biggest one for sure was the HVAC and then having, to remediate all that. But just the care and the hand-holding that we got, like working through this. I can't even really literally can't even imagine trying to do this on our own, figure out where do we start? What do we do? What are some steps we can take now? So here we are, again, knock on wood, being in Southern California, it gets a little chilly here at night, like during the winter, but it's not crazy because I'm originally from the East Coast.
Oh
So
gosh.
we, didn't turn on. We basically, okay, we have no heat, no AC until this is done. So we didn't
Yeah.
have heat for, a few months during the winter until this was all being done. But it was just like going through, like answering our questions, what do we do first? And then, okay, but what about this? Just because you have, and I do recommend as you're planning to have an inspection and you're waiting for the result, and even when you get the results, is write down the questions that come across, because you're going to have a bunch of questions. This is
And you
all, like,
should.
if you're like me,
Yeah.
like most people, this is all brand new. Like, okay, so what does this mean? And how do we handle this? And what about, some of the items? Okay, what are there some things we can salvage in the house, and going through that too.
Yeah, and you should have those questions. Everyone's going to have a lot of questions, 100%. I always personally try to encourage people to come in with your questions because I could only, everybody has different questions, right? I could be looking at the same
Right.
report for 10 people and 10 different versions of what someone understands or needs clarity on. So that's
Right.
really
Yeah.
important. I do want to shout out Zach. Zach was your consultant. He is awesome.
Yeah.
The feedback that
Yes.
you gave is what
Yes.
he gets all the time. And I want to say that just for people listening, like I'm not the one that does all of it all the time, right?
Right.
So
Yeah.
we have a team that have been trained under our philosophies and our processes and our knowledge bases and all that stuff to be able to have a call that allows you to feel the way that you did coming out of the call that isn't just Brian's head. And I think sometimes you're like,
Mhm.
I only want to, like who's this person? I don't know this person, right? It's like if I'm
Oh my
putting the
gosh, she
person in
just is.
front of you,
Yeah.
they belong in front of you. That's all that I will say.
Yeah. Super knowledgeable, like genuinely caring person, because I
Mhm.
assume maybe he has been in a similar situation. I don't know. But if you've ever been through this mold mold journey, mold fiasco, it just gives you a different appreciation for what people are dealing with.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think it comes from just seeing like working with so many people, right?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
had I had my thing, but in the grand scheme of things, my thing was not a severe thing. It was a short-term,
Yeah.
acute thing. It got fixed. I was lucky enough to be tied into the person that basically changed my life and set me on this path. And that's,
Yeah.
that's the reason that all of that happened. But until you work with, thousands of people and you see it over and over and over again, you just you either develop that empathy or you're a psychopath. Like you're one of the two
Mhm,
things.
mhm,
And so,
mhm, mhm.
as you get through this, you just see and understand it's not just one person. This is all the stuff that you always hear all the time. Oh, it's just you. Oh, you're the weird one. You're the crazy one. Oh, you're
Yeah.
this, that, or the other. It's
Right.
not that. And the
Right.
more that you work with people, the more that you see it. And you don't have a heart if you don't go into this and are empathetic, right? And so I like
Mhm.
everybody
Yeah.
who's in our ecosystem, they've been doing it, right? And they see it and they understand the people. And I think that component of it, like, my father-in-law, who's the one who kind of opened me up to all this forever ago, he used
Mhm.
to call it bedside manner. He's like, you have to have a good
Mhm.
bedside manner for people because
Yeah.
they're going through a lot, right? And you can't just
Mhm.
run in there pointing at all the stuff because you're so excited you found all the stuff. Like, that's when I first started. I was just really excited that I was finding things. I'm like, oh, I'm good at this. Like, hey, this is here and this is here and this is
Yeah.
here. And then imagine you sitting on the other side, like, oh, you're crushing me, like while you're doing this. So that bedside manner is incredibly, incredibly important, and it helps people to process some of this stuff and to be able to take the key information that they need so they can do the steps and do what they need to do to move forward. So I'm really glad to hear that
Yeah,
about you.
because you figure, pretty much everybody who's coming to you, they're doing it because they or a family member has a health issue. If mold didn't cause health problems, I nobody would feel like they needed to have it remediated. So, and I know just from there's such a wide spectrum of how it affects people. Everybody's different.
Everyone's different. So let's talk about now. So you did your remediation a little bit ago, not too long ago. So you've been in the house for 6, 8 weeks or
Yeah.
so. So
Yeah.
well, let's talk about this. How much did you actually remediate? Let's dig into that a little bit because we found, I don't
Oh,
know, there's like 20
okay.
things. Then how much did you
Yeah.
actually
So
do?
there were a lot. Oh, wait, hold on, you just cut out. What did you say?
Oh, I say, like, how many areas did you actually end up remediating? Did you just do a portion of it? Did you choose to do a whole bunch of it? Like, I know we prioritize it out for
Yeah.
you, but like, how
Okay,
much of it did you actually do?
good good question. So we took care again, amazing to have it prioritized. We have taken
Hmm.
care of the level A. That's the highest
Okay.
priority. The A's, and there were 2 B's. Those were smaller. One was
Hmm.
a very, very small issue in the laundry room. One was the water heater platform out in the garage, and then a couple of C's. So we're just kind of like chipping away. The ones remaining are definitely lower priority. We're going to get to them over the course of this year, but so yeah, the HVAC was that was the big one because we had to replace both of the units, all the ductwork, all the vents, and all that. So it was big. It was a big job, but you don't have a choice. Like right? Otherwise, you won't be able to turn on your AC or your heater again.
No, you're right. Do you mind if I share how many things that there were? Because I want like people to have context for
No,
like how
go right
many
ahead.
A's and B's like that. So there was
Yeah.
17 things that we found. There was
Yeah.
one tier A, which
Mhm.
outside of the HVAC system, so just like kind of structural living stuff. There was one
Got it.
tier A. There was, and then the HVAC system you would lump into that. So let's call it two tier A's,
Mhm.
two tier
Mhm.
B's, and those were your
Mhm.
top tiers. So out of 17 things,
Mhm.
there was four that fell into tier one and tier two. That's
Yeah.
25% of everything that was found where there was actually stuff that was going on. So for people listening, I really
Mhm.
want them to like kind of put that piece together. It's and if I'm looking at this, let's say for example, there was let's see. I'm trying to find a place that would have been like an expensive fix that you didn't necessarily that fell further on the list, and it helps you like adjust and reallocate the money a little better, right?
Okay, so
So like,
yeah, so I would say the primary bathroom is a potential issue behind that's like if when you walk in the primary closet, you can see behind the wall, the closet and where the bathtub is. So there is a
yep.
potential issue there. Yeah.
Yeah, so there was like a wall that backed up to the shower, for example, from your primary
Yes.
bedroom, which is
Yeah.
one of these areas. So if you're actually gonna like, if there's an issue there that needs to get done, like you maybe it's just the wall and the shower can stay, but a lot of times if there's an issue behind a shower, the shower ends up being something that needs to be addressed, right? That
Right.
is a
Right. Yeah.
big cost thing to do. You're talking 10,
Yeah.
15, maybe 20 grand to rip it out and then to put a new shower in or redo the bathroom or whatever that is, right? That fell
Yeah.
down to tier D or tier four, right? This is where
Mhm.
the value of the tiering list comes in. Because one way you could have looked at it and be like, well, it's in my bedroom. So I have to do it because it's in my bedroom. But it
Mhm.
was so
Mhm.
low on the level of issue that was there. Technically, it's a problem, but
Yeah.
like, what was the severity of the problem? That you effectively save $20,000 on something that technically, yeah, could be remediated and there's nothing wrong with doing it. But is it going to have the impact that is in line with the amount of money that you spent to address that area? And the argument there would be probably not. So I reallocate that
Mhm.
money to the HVAC system, which was a big thing to do. And now you're using the same
Yeah.
budget in a way that's getting you a much better result without saying I have to do every single thing that's here. And like that is the formula, right? The formula is figure out where it
Right.
all is and then try to do as little as you can by maximizing the impact that you get from the things that you do.
Mhm. And I'm glad you said that too, because I listened to one of your episodes that was so incredibly helpful, and it had to do with insurance and whether or not to go through your insurance. So,
Yeah.
what some people may or may not realize if you've never been through this mold remediation journey before, most insurance will not pay for remediation unless it's due to an active leak.
Mhm.
So what we paid for was all out of pocket. However, when we go to remediate our bathroom, we're going to get an estimate on that, and then we'll decide, okay, do we want to go through the, because if it's in the bathroom, if there's a leak, okay, it's an active leak, insurance will most likely cover it. So we'll just have to determine based on the cost. If it's $20,000, we're probably going to go through insurance. If it's like,
Yeah.
5, 7, 8,000, we'll probably just pay for it. But that was a really helpful episode because you do have to decide, okay, am I willing to have the insurance cover it with, okay, is there a possibility they could cancel me? I don't know. But like you kind of have to weigh the pros and cons of that.
Yeah, I mean, it's anytime you submit something, you're now riskier, and now they're like, we either cut you or we raise your rate. So you really have to decide if it's worth it. And for different people, there's different dollar thresholds for
Right.
that. One thing you can
Exactly.
try to one thing you can try to do with so I would get a public adjuster first and like run this
Mhm, mhm.
strategy by them, right? But if you know that there's an area like opposite a shower, right? Like what we were just talking about, the wall on
Yep.
the backside of a shower. And we know that insurance companies are going to be more about active, like moisture issues that are going on. If that wall gets open, if you open up that wall and then have somebody come in and there is like something super minor, they can kind of point to the fact that, oh, yeah, there is like a little something here. That now gives you more ammunition to go and say, hey, I want to have this looked at. Right. And then the thing about insurance, they write you the check and then they never talk to you again. And so,
Mhm, mhm.
one way to work through this, even if you have like your plan, right? Like one thing that you could have maybe tried to do is we're gonna hit the A's and the B's. We're also anywhere that's opposite a plumbing line that was identified, we're just gonna open it just for investigation. We're not gonna do any crazy remediation.
Mhm,
We're just
mhm,
gonna like
mhm.
cut the wall open around it. If I see any staining or water damage in there or any indication that there's some sort of active thing, I'm gonna claim that for my insurance so I can get the money to fix that, but I know that it's a tier D on my thing. So I don't really care if I fix that in priorities, but I'm going to take that money and now I'm going to go fix the HVAC and I'm going to go fix the other thing or something like that. So these are like little
Yeah.
ninja hacks that you can start doing, but I would definitely get like an adjuster in and say, hey, listen, I want to try to like figure this out. Like, how do we do this? Right. And it's like these little ways that you could try to maximize the money on the back end too.
Yeah, that's so helpful. Yep. Mhm.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
anyways,
But
how are you
yes, as
doing
far
there?
as going so I'm doing really well. I see my doctor again the next couple of weeks. We're gonna rerun tests, see where I am, but I feel like I have improved. I feel like my energy level is back up. My leg strength is much better than it was. So things are improving. I am working with him on detoxing from the mold, and I think it is important to work with the practitioner because it depends on what type of mold you have, what type of binders will work best for that. So I feel like I'm in really good hands between working with We Inspect with your team, having a really good doctor who is very, knock on wood, um very mold literate. He's very, I think that's important too, is to find a practitioner um, who knows what they're talking about, because and you probably hear this a lot, Brian, that it's easy to can't really get emotional, but to go through these things and feel like you're the only one that's struggling with whatever this is. And your doctor's running labs and saying, well, you're fine. There's nothing wrong with you. And to have to go through and finally found like the 10th doctor. I mean, I went to neurologists, neuromuscular doctors, all kinds of specialists. And it was, there's nothing wrong with you. Oh, clearly there is. I can barely walk. So to be dismissed as a patient because they can't find out what's wrong with you, it's just important to like I knew there was going to be somebody who could figure out what was wrong, and you just have to not give up and keep looking and keep searching and finding someone who can help you, because there is somebody out there. Sorry, I didn't mean to get so emotional about it, but I know it's hard for
I'm
patients
holding
when you're
back.
in the medical system. Yeah,
I was saying, I'm holding
it's
it back.
hard. It
It's
can
a
be
little
hard
hard.
as
Yeah.
it can be hard as the patient when you're dealing with kind of like these mystery symptoms, and your tests are coming back, oh, you're fine. Just, you have to advocate for yourself, and I'm just a stubborn enough person to know that there is somebody out here. I'm gonna like, if there's somebody, I know I'm not the only person who's dealing with this. I'm However long it takes me, I'm gonna find someone who knows how to help me. And I did finally find that person. It took a little over a year, the 10th doctor, but I'm very grateful.
So, have a lot of listeners in California. You want to throw out his name?
Um, probably not, because he already has a 6-month wait.
Oh, he's already
But
got a
the most
6-month
important
wait.
thing is, yeah. But to find so the first thing is, and this is my opinion, just based on everything I've been through with the medical system, is if your current practitioner can't figure out what's wrong with you, search out a functional medical doctor. They are the specialists, the doctors who look for root cause, not just, oh, let me give you this pill to mask a symptom. And it may take 2, 3, 4, it may take a few doctors, but just find one for sure who is very knowledgeable about mold, and start there. And I hope it doesn't take you 10 doctors, but it's common. It's really common.
It's very, very common. And it's why I like doing these conversations. So you can avoid the 10 doctor roundabout that everyone, and I say
Yeah.
everyone, I mean, a lot of people do this, right? And
Mhm.
you could, I mean, if I personally, just knowing what I know now and stuff I'm straight to a functional doctor. I don't even have a primary.
Yep.
Like,
Yep.
if
Yep.
something goes on with
Yep.
me, I go to the urgent care, I go do whatever I need to do. And otherwise, it's functional medicine. Like, that's what it is, right?
Yep.
Like, for me, it doesn't even exist there's a reason for them for like acute specific things, right? Like, I don't want to bash
Yes.
it like
Yeah.
completely, right? Because there's definitely
Right.
like a
Right.
need for that type. But it's like a service for a type of need, right? And so if the need is not in line with what they can offer you, right? Then it's just the wrong fit, right? Like if you wanted a I don't know, a plumber to come into your house, but then you called We Inspect. We're great at what we do, but we're not a plumber, right? So then it's just like the
Mhm.
wrong type of
Yeah.
service for what you need,
Mhm.
right? So I think that's
Yeah.
really helpful. I appreciate you spending some time and sharing your story. Like I said at the top, my hope is that when people hear these types of stories, it it counteracts tenfold all the people on social media telling you that you have to burn your house down and go live in the woods, because it's
Yeah.
not really
Yeah.
true.
No.
Um, but when you don't know who to talk to and you go search for stuff, who's puppy mama 3547 and what does she know about mold and health? I don't know, but she says I have to burn my house down. And it's like, it's tough.
No. No.
So I
No.
appreciate you sharing
We
all that.
feel yeah. We feel good, and there we during remediation, we were out of the house for a few days. We considered it a staycation. We rented an Airbnb for a few days while that was going on, but it's just a good feeling to be back in the house, to feel comfortable again. Yeah, and like, thank you so very much for what you do, for what your team does, because it makes a big difference. So thank you.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you for sharing. I'm very happy to hear it. And continued improvement. I'm excited for you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. All right. Take care. Bye bye.
Take care.